I'm feeling like I just need to do a little bit of late spring, oh, dare I say summer refresh to some of my decor. Hello everyone, it is so good to see you all. I am so excited that you are here and I'm looking forward to spending some time together today. We're going to jump into a couple of really fun DIY projects just to do a little sprucing up on some of my decor. So we've Easter has come and gone, we've taken down the Easter, and now I just feel like I need a small refresh. I'm not going to completely redo everything, but I do feel like a small refresh is in order, and I know we are nowhere near summer, so we're going to call this a late spring refresh. Okay, friends, are you ready to jump into a really fun DIY project? This project is definitely a new medium for me. I feel like I say that a lot, but I am always liking to try new things and, just venture out from just the same old ordinary. So we're gonna be playing with some drywall mud today, and we're gonna turn it into art. Alrighty friends, we're gonna need just a few supplies for this project. We're going to need a canvas. You can choose any canvas size that you would like. We're also going to need paint brushes. We're going to need the main medium. We're going to be using drywall mud. Well, I'm using drywall mud because that's actually what I had on hand, but plaster of Paris will work for this project just as well. So let's go gather up all of our supplies and get this project started. The first thing we need to do is draw some shapes on our canvas, and you could draw anything on this canvas that your heart desires. I'm just going to do some large flowers with really large petals. So I just used any kind of a round shape that you have to create the center part of my flower, and then I did draw this petal and then cut it out just so that I could get all of my petals kind of uniform. And you can see that I don't finish the very tip top of this using the pattern. I kind of freehand that in so that I can make the tips of each petal look just slightly different from one another. So with the first flower, I didn't draw the entire flower onto the canvas because I kind of wanted it just barely peeking on. But I'm drawing the same version of that flower up here in this top right-hand corner, only it's going to be a smidge smaller and I will have more of the flower showing. So I start by creating kind of like an airplane propeller here to kind of give the flower the proper proportion, and then I will just go around and fill in the rest of the petals around the flower. And one thing that I should mention here is we are actually going to be using some drywall mud to outline all of these flowers. So when you choose a shape for your canvas, I would recommend choosing something that is a little on the larger side of things. All right, so now let's mix up our mud. And y'all, I am just using some drywall mud here, but you could also use plaster of Paris. I think that would work exactly the same. And you don't want your mud to be too thin, but you don't want it to be too thick either. So I mixed mine up, just adding some drywall mud into the cup and then a little bit of water. And I just kept adding a little bit of water at a time until I got like a thick milkshake consistency. And then we will I sorry about that, stutter over my words, use your words, girl. All right, so you can see here that I got it a little too thin, so I'm adding a smidge more drywall mud to this. And after I get the mud completely mixed up, I am going to add it to a piping bag. If you don't have any piping bags on hand, you could use like a Ziploc and then just cut a small section off in the corner to use this. One thing that I did have a few troubles with is I did get some clumps, and which made it kind of hard to squeeze out of the piping bag. So when you're mixing this up, I highly recommend that you mix it up really, really well and make sure it's pretty smooth so that you don't have any clumps clogging your piping bag. Once we have our piping bag all filled up, I am going to cinch the top of this just using some of these rubber band things that are designed for piping bags, but you could just use you could use a string, or you could use just a regular rubber band. I just happen to have these on hand. Then I'm going to go ahead and cut a hole in the bottom of this, and I highly suggest that you cut a smaller hole than what you think you're going to need, so that if you have to make it bigger, you can, but if you make it too big, you'll just have to dump it into a different piping bag because you can't make the hole smaller once it's been cut too big. All right, so now here's where the fun part comes into play. We are going to outline the petal. Okay, so y'all, this first one did not go so well. I had some clumps in my piping bag, so that's where mixing it smooth comes into play here. And so it kind of just gushed all out on me. And so after I kind of played with it a little bit, I decided to wipe all of it off and start that entire petal over again because it just looked too messy. But what we're going to be doing here is we're going to pipe on the outline shape with the mud, and then we're going to take our brush and just do some swiping motions from the outside inward and just kind of flick your brush a little bit to just create these cool texture and shapes to sort of fill in the petal. So here we're going to do one more, and as I go along here with each of these petals, I do get better and better and better. One thing I learned is that you do not want to squeeze the bag super, super tight because the mud will just come gushing out in one big blob. So you can see here how I'm kind of just flicking my brush from the outside edge inward and to just create kind of these lines and just some cool texture in each of the petals. And you're probably going to want a jar of water on hand too, because I do clean my brush frequently, because if the mud starts to build up on your brush, you can't get those nice like thin lines. It kind of just starts to get blobby, and we don't want big blobs here. We kind of want things to be, you know, somewhat delicate and I don't know what the word that I'm looking for here is, but we don't want big blobs. We kind of want to avoid the blob. So I'm just going to continue, you know, like swiping, doing some swiping and creating some lines, and then I clean my brush, wipe it off really good, and then go back and start doing it again. And I just work each petal until I feel like it's filled in enough and it's got some texture. And some of them I don't fill in all the way, some of them I leave a little bit of white space in the center. So each petal is kind of a little bit unique and different, because when you look at a flower in nature, not every petal is exactly the same. So I wasn't going for complete uniform here. I did want this to look more on the natural side of things. And something else I was going to mention too is that play around with different brushes. So I'm using an angle brush on this particular flower, but when we get to the other flower, I switch to a round brush, and then later on I'm actually going to switch to a fan brush. So play around with some different brushes to get different strokes and kind of different textures in your petals. This very last petal that I'm doing here turned out the very best. I mean, it's probably the better one. So like I said, as I continued around, I got a little bit better and better with this, and you'll kind of get a feel for how much mud you want to put down and the pressure. You definitely don't want to squeeze that bag too hard. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the center, and I just squeeze a little bit into the center of the flower, and then I'm taking a stippling brush and doing a pouncing up and down motion to kind of get that cool texture that sort of looks like seeds, like the center of a flower would look. So here I'm going to give you a close-up of how I do the flicking motion with my brush, so that hopefully this will help you a little bit so you can sort of see what I'm doing here. This mud has a super slow dry time. So if you do make a mistake, it's really easy to kind of wipe it off. And I mean, I had to do that a lot. There was a lot, like right there, I didn't like the way it was looking. So I just take my brush and kind of just scoop it up like it's a spatula or whatever, and just kind of wipe it off. It wipes really easily. It's pretty forgiving. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes and had some petals that I didn't like, or got some big blobs and had to wipe those off. So, but you could also use like a scraper or something similar like that if you need to like scrape a whole big section off and start over. But so as far as dry time goes, it did take this about 20 hours to fully dry. So I did this in the morning, and then I just let it sit all night and came back to it the next day to finish this off. So on this great big flower up here in the corner, I did probably use a little bit too much mud. It really doesn't take much. So again, it's pretty forgiving. You can wipe some of it off if you need to. But I do this, and with this one I used a bigger stippling brush so I could just kind of get that super fun pouncy motion to get like little like dots of sorts in the center part of the flower. Now that our flowers are all done, I do want to give just some of the blank areas on our canvas some texture. So I just take a little tiny bit of that mud on my angle brush and just kind of do some super gentle swatches back and forth just to get like some straight lines and just a couple of areas of just added texture in here. And these are very subtle. Once it's completely dry, you don't really see them. You don't see them much. They kind of just add a subtle detail to the canvas. So this is what everything looks like when it is completely dry. And it did, like I said, it did take about 20 to 24 hours for this to dry. But it looks so cool. I'm really loving this so far, y'all. I think this is turning out so fun. So now I'm going to go ahead and just start painting everything, and you could just leave it, excuse me, you could leave it the way it was, but I wanted to add some dimension and some depth to this by using paint. So my first coat of paint I'm using chalk paint here. Everything, all the paint that I'm using today is a chalk paint. And I'm going to start with the color, I believe this is called French Linen. And I'm either using Waverly or Folk Art chalk paint. I kind of use both brands. I like them both equally, so I kind of go back and forth. And I believe this one was French Linen by Waverly, I do believe. So I'm going to cover the entire canvas with this color. And I'm using just a big chip brush to do this. And then we will come in with some different colors and just start adding some depth and some dimension to these flowers. This next color that I'm going to add in is called Moss, and I am using a very, very, very dry brush to do this. So I dip my brush in the paint and then wipe most of it off on my paper towel, and then I just very gently, not with a very light hand, you don't want to use a heavy hand here, just gently kind of just do some scribbling of sorts back and forth on the canvas using the wide edge of my brush. So I hope that makes sense. So I keep my brush flat with the wide edge down. And then in some places when I want thinner lines, I will turn the brush upright and just use the tip, if that makes sense, so I can get some thinner lines on this. So I'll do this whole thing, just go over it with that moss color, and then I'm going to take a stippling brush and use some antiquing wax. This is a Waverly antiquing wax or antiquing glaze. I'm not sure if it's either wax or glaze, and kind of go over just some of the super textured parts with this, and then I go over it with the brush, and then I do wipe some of it off with a damp paper towel just to kind of blend it a little bit and give it that smooth look. And I do this, I mix this in with the moss color too, all over the canvas in kind of that scribbly motion back and forth.
Okay, you guys, that was so much fun. I really love how this piece turned out. I think I could go crazy with this art medium and use it. I can see myself using it for all the seasons. Like in the fall, I could see doing some pumpkins, and at Christmas, I can see doing trees. I just think this is really, really cool, and I do think that it's got a lot of versatility to it. Is versatility a word? I don't know. Is that a word? Maybe we're gonna make it a word. So anyway, I do think that you could do a lot with this medium. So now that we've done our smaller piece, let's venture out into a great big large piece and see what kind of trouble we can get into with that.
I want to pair these two pieces together, so I went ahead and drew that same flower, only this time it's much larger. So I don't remember what size these canvases actually are, but I will go measure them after we get finished here, and then I will leave those measurements in the description box for y'all so that you know what size canvases that I used. So I'm just going to do that same exact technique with this larger flower as we did with the first one. The only thing I'm doing slightly different here is I am using a different brush. So I thought it would be kind of neat to try a fan brush on this one, especially because this is these petals are a lot larger than our smaller piece was, so there's a lot more surface area in there to fill up. So I thought it would be kind of neat to try a fan brush, and I'm liking it. I really, really like so far how the fan brush is giving just that super airy lines, and they're a lot finer in some places, and I really like how it just adds so much cool detail to each of the petals. And in some places I use the fan brush in a vertical position and just barely flick the mud across the petal, and then in some places I actually put the fan brush flat and flick the mud using that technique. For the center on this one, I use the exact same technique as we did on our other two flowers. The only thing I do different on the center of this one is I use a much larger brush, and I did use a little bit extra mud so that we could get a lot more texture. So I just kind of go ahead and spread that mud all around and do that pouncing up and down motion to give it lots and lots of texture. And then after it's completely dry, I painted the entire canvas the exact same color as we did the first one. And then with a very dry brush, I just start layering in all our different colors. I used some moss, I used that antiquing glaze, and then I used another creamy color to just give this piece lots of layers, lots of depth and dimension.
Alrighty, now that we have our art pieces finished, which turned out amazing, I'm really loving these. I feel like they need to be framed. So let's take our projects out to the wood shop and see if we can create just some kind of super simple frame for our canvases.
For the frame on these canvas pieces, I recruited Michael's help, and we just took a 1x4 to the table saw and ripped it down into 3/4 inch pieces. These are 3/4 inch square pieces, and then I brought them back into the studio and just stained each of these with some black stain that I created myself by using some black chalk paint and just watering it down a little bit. So after they are all stained, I'm really liking this stain color. I think it's going to give a nice contrast to our canvas. But after we get them stained, I go back out to the shop and then I just glue all of these to the canvas. I use some wood glue here. I'm using that Tight Bond wood glue. It's my favorite wood glue to use. It just has a super strong hold. And then I also use a tiny bit of hot glue to just give it that instant hold, so it stays together while I'm clamping all these together, because I will clamp all these frame pieces to the canvas and then I let them sit for about 4 hours before taking the clamps off. And then after the clamps all come off, Michael came in and reinforced this whole frame with just some small brad nails all the way around. Something I should mention too here is that I did not tighten these clamps super tight because I didn't want my canvas to start to buckle, because you know there's also a wooden frame inside the canvas, and I noticed if I got it too tight, the actual canvas itself would start to buckle. So anyway, we've gone ahead and removed the clamps, the glue is all set up, and Michael is just going to reinforce this frame all the way around the perimeter with some brad nails.
Well, friends, I love how these have turned out. I just can't say that enough. I'm so excited about how well this project turned out, and it was just so much fun playing with this drywall mud and doing something completely different with it and totally out of the ordinary. And so after I got them styled in my living room where I wanted them, I kind of got this idea to create a gallery light to go over the piece of art, which you can see back here behind me. And I'm going to show you guys how I put that gallery light together that doesn't require any hard wiring or electricity of any sorts. So let's run out to the shop and work on that really quick, and then we'll come back in and I'll show you how I finished styling all of our art pieces.
We started this little project off by cutting a piece of round wood that is the same exact depth and diameter as the back part of our lamp, the part of the lamp that actually goes against the wall, this part right here that you can see. So Michael made that round piece for me, and then we go ahead and just put some notches in it where screws are going to go into the lamp, but our screws were just a little bit too long, so Michael just shortened them down for me. And then we just go ahead and drill a hole in the back of this round, and then we will countersink these as well, so that the screw is flush with the back part of our piece of wood. And then we'll just go ahead and attach it to the back part of our lamp. And I did cut all of the electrical wires out of these lamps. These lamps that I used, I found on Amazon, and I will have them linked in the description box for y'all. So we just go ahead and piece this piece of wood to the backing part of this, and I'll show you guys in just a minute why we did it this way. So this is how that piece of wood looks after it's been fit into the back part of our lamp. And the reason that we did it this way, y'all, is because I want to be able to hang this on my wall with command strips. And the reason I chose to use command strips is so that I can move this around if I want to. If you know that you want this to be held into place permanently, you could just screw that back piece straight to your wall using anchors or screwing it into a stud, but I want to be able to move this around if I so choose. So I'm going to use command strips, and I use 3 of these. I'm using the Velcro-y kind of command strips, and I will also have those linked in the description box for y'all. I put 3 of them on here. I probably didn't need to use 3. I probably could have got away with 2, but I wanted to make sure it was going to hold really well. And it does, y'all. It holds perfectly. I mean, it doesn't even budge on the wall. Then I just put a battery-operated puck light on the inside of this, which is a magnetic light. So it just held right in there with magnets, and this is how it turned out, y'all. I really love this. I think it just added a lot to this space in my living room. And this is what it looks like with the puck light turned on. It isn't super bright, but it still kind of creates a really cool ambiance.
Well, friends, what do we think of our projects today? I am loving them. I hope you guys enjoyed this too, and that it inspired you to just get out and try something new and fun. This was a fun medium for me to work with. Who would have thought that we could turn drywall mud into something so artistic and so cool? This was a ton of fun for me. I love the results, and I'm really going to enjoy them in my home. Next week is going to be so much fun. I have a big surprise for y'all. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell also, so that you don't miss out on any future videos from me. Next week's definitely going to be a fun one. You don't want to miss out. Alrighty, friends, it's time for me to say goodbye, but I will see you all again next week. Until then, y'all take care, and I will see you soon. Bye. No. That was a complete botch. You can't say then twice. That just doesn't work.